But this is something that we've discussed, me and Daniel, regarding the podcast as well. Because like, at what level should we have the discussion?
Right.
So a thing that we've thought about is that we should try to make it as as useful as possible, because then, as you said, people feel that, oh, this is
about me. This is about what we do, after all.
This is something that I perceive, and something that I can use as well to improve my experience at the table.
Now, I do think that discussion can only go so far before you do have to dip down.
Exactly.
And reference things that are not to be... You can say, for example, I think that I'm going to live my life like this and like this and like this. And somebody could say, well, the biochemistry of your cells is not going to let you do that.
No.
And so, it doesn't all have to be negative either. I mean, sometimes knowing the phenomenology can open up options that are actually possible.
But that's great, because we've had the exact same thing in the podcast. Like, when we have these discussions, we find the need to take it at a deeper level, to go into detail on a specific thing. And I think that is also a good way for the listeners to like open up. How does this detail, like if we talk about that phosphate thing that you talked about, like, I don't know how to relate to that.
Of course, nobody can.
What should I use it for?
I can even draw a hexagon on the board, and it's got the carbons in the right place and shit, and you're going to be, God, what are you doing?
But if you take it at the other level, like when you're talking about the useful stuff that you can perceive, you can make small, like... you can just pinch those things, lift them, and say that, okay, this is where this component plays in.
Well, it becomes possible, because what we are not talking about now is the precise claim, right? We could talk about the precise claim. What do I think the metabolism of role-playing is, right? We could talk about the exact thing that I think about that. More importantly, we're talking about the pedagogy of learning it.
Yeah.
The pedagogy of saying, okay, well, I'd like to get a little bit educated in this. Possibly because I'm not as happy as I think I could be, or maybe I am very happy, but I am just a little bit intellectual today, so I want to, be uncomfortable enough to talk about how this could be happening. Maybe my friend is unhappy, but I don't know why. So, okay, we're going to talk about these. Well, it is worth recognizing that, as we say, talking about the accessible variables can only go so far, because sooner or later somebody is going to say, well, I guess that's true, but why is it true? And then we have to dig deeper into what is really happening. So what would I pick for the most accessible things?
Yeah.
One of them involves all of those social accommodations like lines and veils. That's one of them. Which moves into some very interesting questions. Are we playing to take care of one another? Or, as Meg Baker puts it, no one gets hurt? Or are we playing, as she puts it, I will not abandon you, which means let's find the lines. I won't abandon you when we get there. I'm not going to throw you over your own line.
No.
I'm going to be there with you. Are we going to play that? Those are two pretty different social experiences, creative experiences of playing. That's the difference between going to the let's say the Impressionist street scene painting exhibition and the Holocaust Museum. Right? I mean, one of them is, when we go and look at these paintings of the Parisian people walking up and down the streets and the Impressionist paintings and things, we're going to have a great time. No one's going to get hurt. We go to the Holocaust Museum, I might cry. But you're going to be there with me, okay? So you see, those are two extremely different ways to approach an activity that we're going to do together.
Yeah.
So we can talk about many of these social and emotional connections with the material. We can also talk about who gets to say what. This is more about procedure. Who gets to say what? There's a killer clown. Our characters are dealing with the presence of the killer clown. My character, tackles the person I think is the killer clown in front of everybody in the street, in front of the ice cream stand, and I make my rolls, I batter him to the ground, and you grab my intimidate roll. I have my roll. It says on my sheet I have an intimidate skill, and I roll it. I get a critical fucking result on my intimidate, right? And I shout, admit it, you're the killer clown. Now, in some games, that means I get to say who the killer clown is.
Yeah.
In other games, it definitely does not.
Yeah.
Because the killer clown has been established as somebody already, and I do not have access to that information. This rule may have given me access to that information, but I didn't make it up. So who gets to say what that is? And I call that backstory authority. The things that are the case before we start playing, before the point where our characters are involved or we have put our attention to this situation. In fictional time, what is established as the case? Now, that's backstory authority. We can talk about the way different games distribute backstory authority. Like I just said, I just gave 2 ways we can distribute it. It can be unknown, and then the right role will give it to that person, or it is known and the roles have to deal with their ignorance of what is known. Either way is fine.
Yeah.
And there's lots of different ways to split it up or to move the authority around or keep it in one spot forever or anything. But that's only one of 4 kinds of authority. We also have the authority over where are the characters, who is there with them, what time is it, and what is happening. Situational authority. And that, with each shift in where we are in play, where the characters go and what happens to them and things, with each shift, situational authority has to be granted. And you can have situational authority given to one person all the time. But you will find that it's often traded in an unspoken way. Because in some cases, what you say your character does plays a huge role in what we now focus on, what we focus our attention on. You had more situational authority than you thought when you are very insistent that before that happens, my character is going to go do this. Yeah. Or even nobody said what they thought was going to happen, you just do it. So we know, okay, we're going down to the shop with your character because situational authority has been actually exerted by you in saying your character did that. So so situational authority also moves around the table, sometimes more than we think. Even though we may say, oh, that's the GM's job. Well, pay attention to the table. You might be a little surprised at how many times it is handed around.
Yeah.
One of the most difficult is outcome authority, because that takes us to the rules of resolutions. The rules of resolutions, which are interesting. There's one entire mode of thought that says the rules of resolutions are always subject to extrajudicial judgment. And so that's when the outcome authority is handed to a person. No matter what, we can play with our dice all I want to, but the GM is going to and it's handed to that person. Or we can say, you know what, we are going to accept these weird instruments that we use as actually interfering with outcome authority all the time. So that outcome authority is constrained, badly constrained, by the bouncing cubes, and that we are going to have to adapt. Our outcome authority has to be very adaptable to the constraints that have appeared through the instruments. And I think that we can talk about outcome authority as very important. Is it something that you accept the procedures as providing constraints for it? Or are you saying, well, that's just fake play? You know, you get to roll your stupid dice and feel like you're doing something, but the GM is going to say anyway. So outcome authority is a pretty emotional situation. If I am playing in a game where I thought my use of the skills actually did what it says they are supposed to do, but the other person at the table, maybe the whole group at the table says, no, the GM has outcome authority. I'm going to be pretty irritated. If I knew the GM had outcome authority at the start,
Yeah.
and then I would say, okay, well, then we're all just using the dice when and if we feel they are fun,
Yeah.
I guess. Then I would play that way. Or I would maybe choose not to play with that group, depending on my preferences. But if I don't, but that's the point. Problems appear when people believe different things about how the authorities are arranged. I'm not talking about good play, the best play, how authorities should be arranged. That's where the conversation always goes, and it's a terrible place to go. I don't care. I mean, guess what? Your way is the best way. My way is the way that sucks, and I'm happy. If you're happy about me saying that, I am very happy.
Yeah.
You know, because that just solves a lot of problems for you to be superior. That's great. But if we are playing and each of us thinks the other agrees with us about the arrangements of these authorities, we are going to have some big problems. We are going to really be upset with how each of us is relating to the information in play. Fourth kind of authority, the descriptions of things as outcomes. I don't want to get into it too much. It's just that it seems as though that's a lot like outcome authority, but you know what? It's kind of different. There are interesting ways to treat that as its own thing. I won't bother about it here. I just want to point out that each of these four authorities is independent of each other. So just because you have this kind of authority doesn't mean you automatically have to have that other kind of authority for functional play. And number two, that shifting authorities is possible and centralizing them is possible. So do you see these are relatable techniques?
Yeah.
That we can think about how we play and we say, oh, so this, yeah, that's funny. When we get certain rolls on the dice, have you noticed that everybody at the table suddenly starts shouting a description of what just happened and we all have a great time describing what happened? That wasn't the GM at all. Every time somebody gets in a good hit, somebody at the table provides a sound effect or, describes it. That's funny. The GM's not doing that. I thought the GM described the game world. And it's like, no, not in that case. He doesn't. So you have to kind of realize, these are things we don't really realize we do, but you can see it if you are looking.
Yeah.